Hey everyone, it's Tom Seymour from VHS Massacre. How's it going? Just here with a couple updates for those of you who are interested. This podcast typically talks about the independent film industry, and usually I end up talking about some of the projects I'm working on, but I think a lot of the information can apply to anyone who's actually interested in filmmaking. So one of the things that happened recently was VHS Massacre, which is a documentary about the video store era that I worked on. That original movie recently got on Peacock TV, which is NBC Universal's distribution platform. I did a sequel to a VHS Massacre 2, which is only available on Blu-ray, but also hit number one on Amazon, and a lot of cool stuff happened with that one too. The reason why I want to talk to you today is just about some of the path to this journey and some of the things that I found out recently. So the one thing that's amazing is I made this movie for Trauma Entertainment. Like, they didn't ask for it, but I most of my career I'd made independent films, and I never really got to work directly with Trauma, although I did work with Lloyd on a film years ago. But now I work with him for years. For the past 10 years, I've worked with Lloyd on various projects, so it's been really awesome. And I consider him a really good friend. That being said, so when I signed a deal for VHS Massacre for Trauma Entertainment, I never thought it could possibly get on NBC Universal's distribution platform. That seemed a little ludicrous. And I have to thank John Ferry and the whole Trauma team for making that happen. Like, I was under the impression that they had signed a deal with Film Rise, and that Film Rise then signed a separate deal with NBC, Peacock and all that stuff. But this guy John Ferry from Trauma, I mean, he along with other people at Trauma, like, signed deals with Peacock and with Tubi and all these other stuff. I mean, it had already been on places like Prime and Mubi and all that stuff, but the fact that they have kept this thing going and made the documentaries really have legs, it really blows my mind away. So all this to say, like, if you're considering making like a feature-length horror film or even like a special interest documentary, those two things, by the way, are some of the most successful things that you can do on a low budget. Independent horror and special interest documentary. Those two things actually still sell. They actually work. And it's difficult, but you can do it if you want to do it. There's a place for those films. Now, if you're going to make a no-budget drama, that's going to be much harder to sell. And that's actually what I did in the beginning of my career. And that was probably not the right film to start with, because it really made me think that the task was impossible, of getting distribution and all that stuff. So anyway, I know that, it's like I teach in the CUNY system as a professor, and although I don't define myself that way, I really never felt like an academic. I really feel like just a film nerd or an AV nerd. And that being said, I do notice that a lot of the younger generation aren't necessarily obsessed with making feature-length films the way that I was. I think growing up partially in that 1990s independent film boom where all those big names came out, like Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino, and all that stuff. Of course, if you go back, there's always been independent films. You could go back to George Romero before that, and you could go back to Cassavetes, and if you keep going back, it's literally the origin of the film is, I mean, Edison was essentially the first studio, Thomas Edison, and people flew to Los Angeles to start their own thing to get away from him, So there's always been independent film. Now, YouTube, you could actually say, is a form of independent film, but, making a feature-length project and then putting it on YouTube is not necessarily the best bet, although there are some really amazing YouTubers that do these hour-long documentaries, and they do well on YouTube because of their enormous fan base. So, but there is this alternate path, right? And the alternate path is you make a film, you do the festival circuit, then you send the stuff off to a distributor, you try to get a deal. A lot of people recommend getting a producer's rep. That's a person who's going to sell your film. Can't always do that. Can't always get that. That's someone has to see an enormous amount of potential of money in your film, and they don't always do that, especially not with low-budget horror. But in theory, if you got to a very large festival, maybe you can get a producer's rep for that. But then, essentially, for people like me, although I have had a producer's rep in the past on a few different films, what you may end up doing is trying to go direct to distributors. And these might be smaller, and you may, the days of getting a lot of money up front for your film are, that's very rare. I'd say it pretty much doesn't happen. But sometimes a producer's rep can bundle several films and get you some money, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of a path of how you would do it. And in my, my 15 years of teaching and my, 25 years in the film industry, working everywhere from CBS to NBC Universal to IGN, I do recognize that there are personality types. Now, it's rare when I get a student who has the drive and the ability to do things by themselves. And I've been listening to a lot of, videos on motivation lately, and people talk about this concept of people who do things, people who make things and who do things are really hard to recruit because they don't need you. And you have to be that personality type. The reason why when I teach my classes, it's all about learning to do everything, shoot and edit, and learning to do audio, and learning somewhat about the business and all that stuff. Learning to light is so that you can be unstoppable, so that no one can stop you from doing what you want to. But you will find in your life there are people who are not like you, who don't have the drive to learn themselves, even if you're taking a class, or like I would make films in high school. I would make films even when I was in college. In my spare time, I would always make films because I was obsessed. I would volunteer at Public Access. Not everyone is like that. Some people are driven in other areas. Some people have, are sort of normal people with hobbies, like they go fishing and stuff like that. My hobby was to go and make a movie. And so what you'll find is it's a rare person that does that kind of stuff. One of my best friends, Tim Coolig, he's written over, he's probably closing in on 400 songs that he's written for royalty free, so people can just use them in their projects. And he's an unusual person. That's his hobby. That's what he does. He makes songs so that people can use them in their films. And he's a rare human being. Maybe he's 1 in 100,000. Maybe 1 in a million. So all I'm saying is that if you are this personality type where you're driven and you can work on your own, and people rally behind you, because what happens is often if you are absolutely sure that you're going to make a movie and you know exactly what it is and you know exactly when you're doing it, you will find more than often you will get people who are interested and want to help. And that means that you're a leader of sorts, and it's a really good thing. And so some of you may be reluctant, and you may be worried that if you make a movie that you won't be taken seriously. And that's true. You probably won't be. But the thing is, that's not everyone. Some people won't, some people will. I mean, if you look at some of the stuff that's happening with the studios and some of these streaming sites, people are constantly divided, 50-50. Half the people think it's crap, half the people think it's great. And so you just kind of have to get used to that and know that, you'll find your audience. You'll eventually find an audience, And who cares? If your audience is 5,000 people, who cares? If it's 100,000 people, who cares? If it's a million, who cares? Like, it's our job as artists to create work, and I think that's the point. We never know what's going to hit. We never know what one thing we do is going to, be the biggest thing we ever did. We have no idea, how that's going to happen or what that's going to happen. What way that's going to happen. The only thing you can do is just make the stuff and put it out there, and don't be afraid to be criticized. So that's some of the stuff that you can do as an independent filmmaker. Recently, I have a movie called Exorcism of Fleete Marish. It's sort of I'm calling it newish. It's sort of like a recut with a bunch of new footage, re-edited, a bunch of new scenes. So it's sort of like a new project, but it's based upon footage of this other film called Mark of the Beast that I worked on years ago. And, I entered about 45 festivals. Right off the bat, I got rejected by 7. I got into 2. Okay? So think about the odds of that. It's not great. Whatever that is. 1 in 3.5 or whatever. I don't know. So, you may find if you enter festivals that you only get into a third of them, or maybe even a quarter of them. And that's fine. That's good. Some people blow money on, going out to the bar or going out to clubs and stuff like that. It's not the worst thing in the world if you blow money entering film festivals. If you're just smart about the ones you enter, and maybe try to avoid the corporate ones like Sundance and Slam Dance and Tribeca, and those are not real festivals. Those are basically just corporate billboards, so I would avoid those. But there are some legitimate independent film festivals. Chicago Horror Film Festival is good. What is it? Requiem, Fear Fest in Montreal, Vancouver Horror Show, San Francisco Indie Fest, Another Hole in the Head, World Fest Houston. There's a bunch of places that care about independent films. I like this one called the New York. What is it called? The New York Independent Horror Movie Awards. I think that's what it's called. The Independent Horror Movie Awards. That's fantastic. Actually, that our film Exorcism of Fleete Marish won Best Music, so that's an award for my buddy Tim Kulig. So which was really cool. And to be honest, this kind of stuff helps. You enter festivals, maybe you get in, maybe you win an award. It's a huge ego boost, and it keeps you going. It gives you food, So it's like, these are things that are very important. And you should know that not everyone is going to condone your work or understand you. And I know sometimes people struggle with just, their everyday life and what to do. And a lot of people, especially if you have my personality type, you need a creative outlet. You need to be working and making. And so filmmaking is a constructive thing that you can do. When you're young, you'll have more energy. There's no reason not to do it. Filmmaking is essentially free nowadays. I'm shooting on the Blackmagic Pocket 4K, which is essentially a $1,200 camera body. But you could get a decent mirrorless camera for about $300 with a lens. You can get probably a Lumix G7 for that, shoot 4K, 24 frames a second, and shoot a film that looks good. It costs less than your cell phone, right? So avoid shooting on a cell phone if you can, because a lot of them won't shoot 24 frames a second. And they also shoot mostly deep focus and pretty generic footage that is not good to work with in post-production. So, but if you have to do it, do it. A lot of documentaries are made using at least a little bit of cell phone footage, including VHS Massacre 2. I think had maybe 2 or 3 little sections, maybe just a minute here and there of cell phone footage. So you can do it if you have to. So that's basically what I've been mulling over, and I hope this is somewhat informational and maybe inspiring for you. Go to horror movie conventions. You can meet some of your favorite performers there, and a lot of the horror community are pretty approachable. That's something that's really cool too. That is not like going to Comic-Con, things like that. Like, some of the people are very approachable, and that's basically it. Hang in there, make your movies. And just know, not everyone is like you. Not everyone is going to understand you. If you tell people too much about the films that you're working on and they're not enthused about it, it can kill your creative energy. So don't talk to that many people about the movie you're going to make. I mean, once you got it scheduled, you're going to need to talk to people about recruiting them. You do want to come up with a pitch. But, when you're writing it and stuff, just, it's not worth talking about to people, because even if they don't mean to, they're going to zap your creative energy, and it's really not worth doing that to yourself. There's an energy in having a secret project that you're writing, and there's a joy in it, and you can jeopardize by that joy and that fuel if you talk about it with too many people. You get the idea out of your system, and then you feel like you don't need to make it. So don't be too much of a chatterbox about your projects. I am guilty of that. I do that shit all the time, and I think it's to my detriment. So I wouldn't do that. So it's, you're asking, well, how do I raise a budget for a film? Well, you don't need that much money. You can make the last video I kind of walked through how you could do it for about you could make a feature for about $6,000 to $9,000, shooting over 11 days, 9 days, and then a weekend down the road. So it's definitely possible. And then documentaries, you could just do, honestly, just shoot a weekend a month. Do an interview here and there, and build your documentary like that, or pick a subject where you can, shoot it on weekends. Documentaries are more forgiving like that, and honestly, they're easier. They are. So, anyway, that's about what I have for now. No news, essentially, on VHS Massacre 2. That's still only on physical media. But yeah, VHS Massacre 1, man. You can get it on Tubi for free, Prime for free, Peacock if you have that service. And that's a mind blower. VHS Massacre was a $500 movie. That's all we spent on it, because we had all the gear, and we just hired a few people for something here and there, and it got on Peacock TV. So it's absolutely possible. You can do it, and you shouldn't delay if you're interested in doing it. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.